Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. In this session, we will be discussing from the 20th verse of the 19th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nava idam rajarshivarya chitram bhavatsu krishnam sam anuvrateshu ye adhyasanam rajakirita jushtam Sadyo Jahur Bhagavat Parshva Kamaha. The meaning of this verse is, the sages said, O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty, who are strictly in the line of Lord Sri Krishna, it is not at all astonishing that you give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve eternal association with the personality of Godhead. This is the praise of these assembled saintly persons with regard to Parikshit's action of renouncing his kingdom and coming to this holy place to prepare himself to go back to Godhead by fasting unto death. So, an elaborate purport is given by Srila Prabhupada explaining this appreciation of the saintly persons of Parikshit's action. So, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, foolish politicians who hold political administrative posts think that the temporary posts they occupy are the highest material gain of life, and therefore they stick to those posts even up to the last moment of life, without knowing that achievement of liberation as one of the associates of the Lord in his eternal abode is the highest gain of life. Here, Prabhupada is comparing modern day politicians who are those who are ignorant about spiritual reality. They think that to hold some very high position in this material world, even though it is a temporary position, they think that the post they occupy is the highest gain of their life, and they stick on to that position till they are forced to leave that by being forced to die, quit the body. And they are ignorant of the fact that they are not the body, they are spirit soul. Therefore, after quitting the body at the time of death, they have to enter another body that they are not aware. But if they know about spiritual reality, then they understand there is something much greater to be obtained in this human form of life by practicing Krishna consciousness and achieving liberation to become one of the associates of the Supreme Lord in his personal abode in the spiritual world. That they do not know. So, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport further, the human life is meant for achieving this end. This is the goal of human life. The Lord has assured us in the Bhagavad Gita many times that going back to Godhead, His eternal abode, is the highest achievement. Yad gatva nanivartante tad dhama paramam mama. Mat karma kran mat paramo mat bhakta sangavarjitaha nirvaira sarvabhuteshu yes samameti Pandava. Tyaktva deham punarjanmaneti mameti. So Arjuna. So many places in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about this. Further, Srila Prabhupada says, Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Narasimha, said, "O my Lord, I am very much afraid of the materialistic way of life." Prahlad Maharaj is a pure devotee. Actually, he is fearless. But still, he is teaching us by telling that he is very much afraid of the materialistic way of life. And he further says, "I am not the least afraid of your present ghastly, ferocious feature as Nrsimha Deva." When Lord Nrsimha appeared to protect Prahlad Maharaj against his demoniac father, Nrsimha was very, very, very angry. Against whom was he angry? He was angry against Hiranyakashipu. He was never angry at Prahlad. And Prahlad knew this. Therefore, Prahlad is telling Lord Nrsimha, "I am not afraid of your ferocious form." Because that ferocious form is meant for protecting the devotee. Is meant to chastise the non-devotee atheist demon, that the devotee is confident. And Prahlad Maharaj is telling, why is he afraid of materialistic way of life? He is telling this materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone, and we are being crushed by it. See, foolish people don't realize that taking birth in the material world means accepting a material body. And this material body is subject to so many miseries under the influence of these three gunas, which are constantly harassing us in the form of different kinds of miseries being inflicted against our wish. Adi bhautika klesha, adhyatmika klesha, adi daivika klesha. Constantly being harassed by this. So, Prahlad Maharaj is giving an analogy. It's something like being crushed in a grinding stone continuously. And another example Prahlad is giving here, when praying to Nrsimha Deva, he is telling, "We have fallen into this horrible whirlpool of the tossing waves of life. My Lord, I pray at your lotus feet to call me back to your eternal abode as one of your servitors." Another example Prahlad is giving, suppose somebody is who's meant to live on the land falls into the middle of the ocean. Then ocean means continuously there are waves, and these waves will toss the person up and down, up and down. So it will be a struggle to keep himself afloat, because continuously waves will be coming and trying to overpower the person who has to protect himself against being drowned by those waves. So in the similar way, Prahlad is telling this material world, we are drowning in the waves of the attack by Maya in the form of continuous miseries being inflicted through the gunas. Instead, Prahlad Maharaj is praying to the Lord, "Please call me back to your eternal abode as one of your servants. Prahlad further says, this is the summit liberation of the materialistic way of life. If at all you want freedom from the suffering of this world, then you should simply aim to become one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord in his personal abode as his loving devotional servitor. That is what Prahlad Maharaj is teaching in this prayer. And what is Parikshit praying for? He is also preparing to go back to the spiritual world to become one of the associates of the Supreme Lord. Further, Prahlad is telling, I have very bitter experience of the materialistic way of life. He has already said it is like a grinding stone in which we are getting crushed, or like falling into a middle of the ocean being tossed by the waves continuously. Now further he is telling the bitter experience he has had in this material world. What is that? In whichever species of life I have taken birth, compelled by the force of my own activities, I have very painfully experienced two things. This is common for everyone, not just for Prahlad. Please hear carefully. Two things that everyone is experiencing, which they don't realize. What are the two things? Separation from my beloved. Who is our beloved? Our beloved is the Supreme Lord Krishna. In the material world, we are separated from him. And the second thing is, we all experience meeting with what is not wanted. Unwanted miseries are forced upon us in this material existence. And further, Prahlad says, to counteract these unwanted miseries, the remedies which I undertook were more dangerous than the disease itself. We are suffering from a disease called Bhavaroga. And material means to counteract this Bhavaroga are worse than suffering the disease of Bhavaroga itself. So, I drift from one point to another, birth after birth. The misery doesn't stop simply by giving up one body, thinking that my suffering will be coming to an end when I quit the body. Just like when somebody is suffering too much, they wish that they die rather than live. Especially somebody who's got a terminal illness, chronic disease. They cannot tolerate the suffering and they wish and pray that I may die. But death is not the solution, because they're going to take birth again. And taking birth again without preparing to go back to Godhead means one more material body, and again that material body also, under the clutches of Maya, they're going to suffer similarly. Therefore, Prahlad is concluding the prayer by telling, I pray to you therefore to give me shelter at your lotus feet. I don't want to be in the clutches of Maya. That's what Prahlad is telling. Now Srila Prabhupada concludes by telling, the Pandava Kings, who are more than many saints of the world, knew the bitter results of materialistic way of life. They were never captivated by the glare of the imperial throne they occupied. They were very, very powerful. They were emperors of the world, entire world. Very powerful. But they were not captivated by some allurement of Maya. Therefore, they always sought the opportunity being called by the Lord to associate with him eternally. They were just waiting. As long as the Lord wants us to rule this world, we will rule. But when he calls us back, we are ready to go for eternal life there. So this is temporary. Material existence is temporary. So Maharaj Parikshit was the worthy grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira. So, just like Maharaj Yudhishthira gave up the imperial throne to his grandson, who is his grandson? Parikshit. Similarly, Parikshit gave up the imperial throne to his son Janamejaya. That is the way of all the kings in the dynasty, because they are all strictly in the line of Lord Krishna. That is what is described in this verse by the sages. All the kings in these saintly dynasty of saintly kings, Rajarshi Parampara. Krishna says, Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu. The saintly kings, they strictly follow the instructions of Krishna. They don't permanently hold on to any post in the material world. So they live unattached to all the objects of materialistic way of life. They never are attached. So giving up is very easy for them. And giving up for what? For spiritual life. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.